Welcome back, I'm George, and in this video I'm going to show you 17 settings you need to change on your Apple Watch. I have customization settings, I have improvements for your user experience, and of course I have secret features that are disabled by default and that make your watch 3 times more useful. So that being said, and without further ado, let's begin with the first setting you need to change. If we tap on the Settings app on the watch and scroll down to General right here, we will find an option all the way at the bottom called Screenshots, which, like the name suggests, will let you take screenshots with your Apple Watch. Now, I'm not really sure why this is not enabled by default, but once the feature is activated, you will be able to take a screenshot by tapping on the side button and the crown at the same time, like this, and well, the screenshot will be saved on your Apple Watch photo gallery and on the iPhone's photo gallery. Now, next up, and back here on the main settings page, if we scroll down, we will find an option for airplane mode. Much like with the iPhone, this is a feature that will disable every connection that could be a potential problem if you are on an airplane. But there is actually a very big difference with the iPhone's airplane mode, and it's that in this case, the Wi-Fi will be disabled once we enable the airplane mode, making the watch not be able to connect to the iPhone. So ideally, you want to come here and enable the Wi-Fi, so even when you are in airplane mode, you can still connect to the iPhone so you can receive your notifications and everything else. Now that said, and in the topic of connections, if we come back here to the main settings page and scroll down to Wi-Fi, at the bottom of this page, we will find the option to ask to join. This is essentially going to make the Apple Watch try to connect to any hotspot available. I'm not really sure why this is enabled by default because it is a clear security issue. You don't want to be connecting to random people's internet hotspots. So I suggest you tap on Never and only connect to the Wi-Fi networks you can trust. But anyways, that said, those were the settings you needed to change using the Apple Watch. Everything else in this video, we are going to change using the Apple Watch app on the iPhone. First off, let's scroll down to the App Store page and disable automatic downloads. Essentially, this feature lets you automatically install free and paid apps purchased on other devices. So if you have apps on your iPhone, your iPad, or your Mac, those apps will automatically install on your Apple Watch too. And well, the reason I suggest you turn this off is because realistically, you are not going to use most of those apps on the watch, but they are going to burn internal storage and battery life while providing absolutely nothing. So just install the apps you are going to use. Now that said, one of the biggest issues that I and many people have with the Apple Watch are those constant reminders from the mindfulness app to stand up or breathe. If you want to get rid of those pop-ups, all you have to do is to tap right here on Notifications, then tap on Activity, and then disable Stand Reminders. Because if you leave it on, as you can see, you will receive a reminder to stand up every 50 minutes. And well, for those breathing pop-ups, you have to come back here to the main notifications page, scroll down to Mindfulness, and turn notifications off. Now, that said, something that I found absolutely fascinating is that the Apple Watch automatically installs random podcasts into the watch so you can play them next. As you can see, if we scroll down to the podcast subsetting right here, there is a menu called Up Next, which in this case automatically has installed 10 podcast episodes. Random episodes, by the way, that I don't really know of. I don't really know which podcasts they are. So personally, I prefer to turn this off. And also here on Saved, I also turn it off because if you tap on 10 episodes, once again, the watch will install 10 episodes of random podcasts locally on the watch, which is, of course, not ideal. Now, one of the biggest customization tricks that I have for people using an Apple Watch is to customize their always on display. So if you scroll down to display and brightness and then tap on always on, you will not only have the option to turn on the always on display, but you will be able to customize what things show on that always on display. Or even better, you can come here and disable the always on display altogether because it actually makes no sense. So you probably know if you have an Apple Watch, but it actually has a motion sensor that can tell if you're not looking at the watch or if you are looking at the watch, and it automatically turns on or off, so you don't have to be tapping on the display every time you want to turn it on or check the time. And when this feature is turned on, you will actually never take advantage of the always on display because even if it's turned on, as soon as you look, the display is going to turn on, making the always on display completely useless. The only time when I would recommend you turn on always on display is if this feature is disabled, wake on wrist race. If you disable this feature, that motion thing that I showed you earlier is not going to work, as you can see, so the always on display makes sense. But as soon as this feature is enabled and you can literally turn it on or off with your wrist movement, then the always on display doesn't actually make any sense. Now also here on the display and brightness settings, all the way at the bottom, you can actually choose the wake duration. In this case, between 15 seconds and 70 seconds. 15 seconds is the option that comes enabled by default, but I believe it is pretty low. When you're doing something that doesn't require you to be tapping on the display, you don't really want the watch to be turning off automatically after 15 seconds of inactivity. Imagine you're looking at an email and you're just reading and you have to be tapping on the display all the time because if not, it is going to turn off automatically. Now that said, if you have an Apple Watch, you are probably familiar with the weird way it has to organize the apps. I believe it is called the honeycomb structure, and many people don't like it. So if you come here to App View, you will actually be able to choose whether you want the apps to be displayed with the grid or honeycomb style or in a list view in alphabetical order where you can scroll from the A to the Z and take a look at all of your apps. Now, this, of course, has its own downsides. It is a very, very long list, and if you want to get to an app that's at the bottom, you have to be scrolling for a while, especially if you have a lot of apps. But at least for those of you who hate the grid view or honeycomb view, there is an alternative. Now, what's weird to me is that you can actually arrange the apps you have on a honeycomb style, as you can see, using the iPhone for more convenience, but you cannot arrange the apps you have on a list view, which, would be a nice touch. Having the apps you use most at the top and the ones you use less at the bottom, so you don't have to be scrolling all the time to get to the apps you actually use. But anyways, that being said, and as a little interruption in this video, for those of you watching who would like to be YouTube creators and also like tech, which, is probably the case if you're watching this video, pay close attention because I'm actually building a project and I'm looking for people like you. So once again, if you would like to be a YouTube creator and you like tech, please send me a message to this email right here so we can talk. But anyways, that being said, and back here to the Apple Watch settings, if we scroll down a bit to the Siri submenu, you'll see that the first option is to listen for Hey Deary. I don't want to say the word so I don't trigger any of your phones. This option essentially lets you say the magical words so you can invoke Siri on your Apple Watch. But what many people don't know is that it actually burns an unheard of amount of battery life because it has to have active microphones working all the time. In this case, I suggest you tap on the feature, you turn it off, and you use Raise to Speak instead. This feature right here, Raise to Speak, is going to let you automatically activate Siri as soon as you raise the Apple Watch. It actually works the exact same way as the flicker of the wrist to turn the display on or off thing. It uses the motion sensors on the watch to detect movement, to then automatically, in this case, turn Siri on without saying the magical words. So you can still turn it on without tapping on the button right here, but without burning as much battery life. But anyways, that being said, let's move on to the interesting stuff. As I said at the beginning of the video, there are some features that can elevate your Apple Watch functionality to the next level, and I'm not hyping it up or anything. These features are pretty amazing. In this case, we actually have to come to the Settings app on the iPhone, then tap on Accessibility, and then swipe down to Apple Watch mirroring. If we turn the feature on, automatically, as you can see, we will be able to control remotely, by the way, control the Apple Watch using the iPhone. And this works not only if your watch is near the iPhone, but it can also work through Wi-Fi if they are far away. And this is tremendously useful. There's actually no limitations. So as you can see, we can even access Siri using the iPhone, but Siri is on the Apple Watch, and it works pretty seamless. It doesn't really take a long time for the watch to sync to the iPhone. There's very low latency. And once again, we can do virtually anything that we can do using the watch natively. But my friends, it gets even better because we can also use the Apple Watch to control the iPhone. In this case, we have to scroll down to Accessibility right here, and then tap all the way at the bottom on Control Nearby Devices. Automatically, if your iPhone is nearby, you'll see it right here on the list. And just like that, you'll have a set of controls for the Apple Watch with which you'll be able to automatically control the iPhone, once again, with very low latency. We can invoke Siri, we can go back home, we can take a look at the notifications. And if this list of options right here is not enough for you, don't worry, because there's even more. If you tap on the three dots right here, there will be a long list of controls you can access to play, pause, move forward, backward with media. And yes, of course, it is not as complete as the option we had on the iPhone because we can't really do everything. But if you get creative, you'll see that there's actually a lot you can do with this feature. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions regarding any of the features that I showed, please tell me in the comments. And if not, I hope to see you again very soon in a new video. Peace.